Welcome to Barchart's educational webinars designed to educate you about the pages and tools Barchart provides to support your investment decision-making process. Today's session, an introduction to interactive charts and technical analysis. Barchart's interactive charts are packed with powerful features and settings. However, most users are unaware of the depth and range of customization that Barchart provides for its members. Barchart logged-in users are afforded several benefits, like the ability to choose preferred chart settings, as well as Barchart remembers your last setting as you navigate through the site, offering you the capability to return to a previous viewed chart, study, or tool and have it remain as you left it. Hello everyone, my name is John Rowland, Barchart's head of trading education, and today's session will be a comprehensive look at all things Barchart interactive charts. Now, along the way, I will drop some traders' insight and tips to help you navigate Barchart's interactive charts like a pro. And to help me with today's session is our moderator and Barchart's project director, Jean Baker. Hello, Jean.
Hi there, John. How are you? Ready for this session?
Yeah, a lot of work went into this one. It's a long session. I want folks to be aware of that. But I'm excited to show folks a lot of things that I think they might not be aware of that they can do on our charts.
Yeah, you know, I am going to make a bet that everybody who's in attendance today and who listens through to the very end of your session, they're going to pick up at least one really good trader's tip from you on how to use these charts. There's a lot of stuff packed in there. So I know you have a lot to cover, so I'm gonna be quiet and let you go on. Okay.
Okay, Jean. Thanks a lot. And yeah, let's see how much we can get to today. All right. So just let's start here. What I've done is I've logged into my account, now my Barchart Premier account, but a login user could also be a free or a Barchart Plus user. Now, being logged in is the first step to customization. All right. So our charts are streaming charts. In other words, new price data is received and is displayed on the chart, either it being delayed or in real time. Now, our real time data is received from the CBOE BATS exchange. Now, clicking this real time data will sync up the data that is up here to the chart. Now, most equities will be part of the CBOE data exchange, but some small caps and over-the-counter ones, the data still might be delayed. For futures charts, the data is delayed, and it's delayed for about 10 minutes. Now, another data feature that is available to us is the ability to see price action in the equities that are active outside of the regular trading hours, extended hours, either pre or post. Now, this data, if we click that on, needs to be viewed in what is called an intraday frequency or time frame. And we're going to look at that in a moment, but let's look at a 5-day, 30-minute time frame. And if I scroll along the bottom here, notice my time. I'm going back in time in the morning here, 7 p.m. last night, 5 p.m. last night. This stock was actively trading outside of the regular trading hours. It was actively trading this morning before the regular trading hours. If I turn off the extended hours and I look at my chart, notice it only shows me the price action that is related to the regular trading hours of the exchange in terms of 9:30 to 4 o'clock. The symbol box is where we can type in the exact symbol of the market that we are looking at. Now, if I don't know that exact symbol, what's nice about the symbol box is I can just type in a name or a word, and it will recognize that word and will start searching all other symbols that have that word or that name. So here's a great example. Broadcom is a stock that maybe I want to look at. So I don't know what the symbol is, so I type in Broadcom. So what our symbol box does, it pulls up all the equities that has the word broad in it, and there is Broadcom. And notice the symbol would be a lot different than you would think based on the word. So I just click on the symbol, and that would take me to the Broadcom chart. Apple, again, just type in a series of letters and could easily find that symbol. Now, Barchart offers a variety of common chart types, from the simple open, high, low, close bars to the exotic like Heikin-Aschke, and as well as numerous of candlestick settings. Our traditional hollow candlesticks and our open to close or close to close. Now, a lot of times in our support, we get to this question, what is the difference? And what is the difference, again, of the open to close or close to close candlesticks? So the setting is determining how the candle is colored. So an open to close is based on two data points, the opening and closing price of the current candle. If the price closes above the open, then the candle is colored green. If the closing price is below the opening candle, then it is colored red. The close to close, the determining data points, is the previous candle's close to the closing price of the current candle. And again, if the current candle closes above, it's colored green. If it closes below, it's red. So let's go to NVIDIA because they really have a great example of this. So I want you to concentrate on the candle that is here in this red ellipse. So this setting right now is open to close. In other words, this candle was created red because NVIDIA opened higher and closed lower. If I change it to close as a relationship from yesterday's or the previous day's candle, notice how the candle turns green because this candle closed above the previous day's closing price. So which one do you use? Well, it's just a preference depending on the trader. But most traders prefer the open to close because it shows the true battle of price that is unique to the individual candle's price history and not the relationship to the previous candle. So I hope that helps a little bit with that. Our charts can be arranged by our range and our frequencies. And Barchart provides quick charts defaults based on these ranges and frequencies. So we offer you 3 intraday ranges with frequencies. Here is a 1-day 5-minute chart. Here's a 5-day 30-minute chart. And here's a 1-month 60-minute chart. We have 4 daily ranges that run from 3 months to 2 years. We have 2 weeklies, 3 years and 5 years. And we have 3 monthlies, 10 years to the max. Now, frequency can be adjusted. So over here on frequency, I can go to intraday. And I can change not only the range, how many days of data I want to look at, but I can also change the frequency. So intraday, we can change anywhere between 1 minute to 99 minutes. If I change my frequency to daily, I have a lot of different daily range options as well. And again, with weekly and monthly. Now, the other thing that we can do is we can adjust by date. Again, I can go into intraday, date, how much a range, and my frequency. Day, date, range, frequency. Now, another thing I can do is I can pick a very specific date line. I want to look at price from X date to X date. And I can use the calendar here to set up my chart accordingly. Now, for futures contracts, we do have an additional frequency. I'm in corn here, December corn, and we still have the same settings, the intraday, daily, weekly, so on. Now, those charts represent what is called a contract-specific chart. So notice here that I'm going to change this to a daily chart. And watch my cursor here. Up here in the left-hand corner here, you can see the symbol ZCZ, the December contract. And as I go through price data history, notice that the contract does not change. This is called a contract-specific chart. But if I change my frequency to daily nearby, and I do the same assessment, notice that the symbol will start to change. This is called a rollover chart, as we roll from one contract month to the next. Now, that is determined by the most active contract month, and that is based on volume and open interest. So again, some futures traders like to look at contract specific, others like to look at this, what we call a nearby continuous chart. Now, there are other ways that we can manipulate time and also price. I can left click on the timeline or the x-axis, left click hold, and I can scroll in and scroll out. Or I can left click on the y-axis or the price axis and do the same thing. I can scroll in and scroll out. Or I can come in the chart, left click, and move the chart around. Now, if I want to reset my chart after I've moved it around or manipulated it, I have 2 ways I can do that. I can either double click, which will return me to the original setting, or down here in the right-hand corner, there are 2 little arrows. Just click on that, and that will return us to that original setting. Now, there's also another way I can manipulate this chart, is if I want to zoom in on a particular price area. I'm going to use the Control key on my keyboard, press that down, and then create a shaded area, and that will let me to zoom in on the price that's inside of that shaded area. Again, if I want to return that to my original chart, I can either double click or go to our double arrows there on the bottom. Settings are our gateway to chart preferences. Again, here is my symbol. Let me do this for a second. I want to move back to Apple. So I have a bar chart that I've already picked out, and this was our candlestick close to close, but I wanted to use open to close. And notice now that I can change the settings of this bar chart. I can customize it. Maybe I want to change the colors of my up and down candles. I can make them smaller or larger. I can change the color of the borders. But we can do this with all of our bar types. We can look at something called the high and low price marker. Now, this is going to designate on our chart the highest and lowest price that is visible on our chart. So here is Apple, and I'm at a 3-month daily chart. And here you can see this little half moon. There's one right there, and there's one right there. Now, many times we get this question is, why do I need to know where the high and low is on this particular chart or any chart when I can just look at it and tell that, hey, this is the highest price here and this is the lowest price over here. Now, the reason why we use this as traders is it gives me a greater perspective as I move from different time frames. So now I've gone to a weekly chart. And what I notice here is that my 3-month high and low becomes significant. Not only is the high 3 months, it is also the all-time high. But the low of the last 3 months is now a significant support level where price has recovered from a previous level of resistance. So this gives us a greater perspective why we use these high and low markers. But there are some folks that, hey, each is to your own, and they might not want that, so they could hide it. I can also look at previous price history on the bar or candle prior to today's action, and I can signify that by an opening, high, low, or close, and I can adjust that by color and style as well. Notice here we do have our extended hours and our real-time data. Display. Here's where I can change the size of my chart. Maybe I have a small monitor and a large chart doesn't fit on a small monitor. I could change it maybe to a medium and make the chart a little bit smaller. I'm going to talk about something called symbol and study headers. Now, the default for our charts is called a header. Let me show you what that is. The header is a data box that appears up here in the left-hand corner. Now, notice as I move through my price here with my pointer, the data box changes with the results of what is happening in those individual candles, or it could be our bars. So if I change it to standard, notice now I have a little box over here on the left, again showing that same data information as I move my pointer or crosshairs to an individual candle. Now there is one attribute that is unique to the standard, is if my cursor or my pointer comes close to it, it will jump to the opposite side of the page. If I use bubble, it will follow the cursor or the pointer. So again, a preference here. I kind of like the headers. Trackball will look at when we start adding more studies to our charts. And if I kind of had to give you a kind of tease of what a Trackball would be, I would say it's like a crosshair that has multiple crosses. So it's a way to look at multiple data across a number of fields. And I'll show you that example when we get to studies. And then crosshairs. Again, some folks like crosshairs, some folks don't. If I turn off the crosshairs, I still can get that data information with my pointer, right? Some traders like the crosshairs because it allows them to get very detailed or very close to a specific price or region. Scale. Now, we have a couple ways we can look at scale, a scale type and a scale values. So what does scale type mean? Well, if I click on linear, what this is telling me is that I'm looking at price in what is on our price axis, which is called arithmetic. Oh, God, tongue-tied, Gene. It's an equal distance interval. In other words, like dollars and cents, equally distanced. A logarithmic chart is one that the price increments are based on a percentage change. So let me go to NVIDIA because I think this really kind of plays this out. So here's NVIDIA, and let's go to a much higher time frame. Let's look at NVIDIA over 20 years. And so here is our linear scale, right? Each of the price movements here, the scale is equal distance, right? $50 to 100, 150, the same distance. And what happens is if you have a large range of price here, you can get a bit of a distorted chart. Now, if I change this to logarithmic, notice what happens. Now, the distance of price is based on a percentage. So, for instance, the distance from $3 to, say, $6, 100% change in price will be the same distance as, say, $100 to $200. So a logarithmic chart is a lot more desirable if you're looking at a wide range of price action, or you're looking at, let's say, a chart over a longer period of time. Is one right over the other? No. But if I'm using a logarithmic chart, and then I know that I'm going to get more of this price by percentage and more of a natural looking chart. Let's go back to Apple. So the other scale that I can use is called price or price percentage. Again, price is just the value of the stock or equity at that moment in time on our price axis, but I can change it to a percentage price. Now, notice it says if I change it to a percentage price, it will change my bar chart to a line chart. So let's do that. So I'm going to change Apple from price to percentage. Now, what the takeaway on this one is that as I look at this data field, this range of price, the percentage is based on where that range of price starts. So here is a 3-year chart, and we're looking at from 11/23/20 that Apple is up 60% approximately. If I go to a 3-month chart, and this is June 1st, then Apple is only up 4%. Again, if I change the range of data I'm looking at, also changes the percentage of our chart. Show price labels. So show price labels will be a function that we're going to use if I have, let's say, a lot of tools that are showing prices, or I'm using studies that are showing prices. So the default is the exact value. But what might happen is, as I add more studies, what will happen is maybe some of these studies will start overlapping each other. In other words, the results that I'm going to see on the price axis, and I can't read them. So I might want to have to stack them. So let me give you an example of that. So let's go to, I have a template that I've created. It's based on a moving averages. And I have 4 moving averages that I look at, 20, 50, 100, and 200. But notice, right, 2 of those averages are underneath or hidden because they overlap. So if I go to the settings and I change it to stack, now I can see all those moving averages, and they are in price sequentiality. Another thing we can do is we can look at the margin on our chart. Now, this is not particularly something that is necessity for a trader or a chartist, but some folks like to see a little bit more room on the right edge of the chart. So the default is for 2. So I could change that and make that right side space a little bit larger. And here I'm going to change it to 20 and I'm going to apply it. Now here's a little tip. You need to refresh your chart. And now I have 20 spaces between the last price and my current chart. I go back to my scale and I return it back to 2 and I apply it. I still need to refresh it. Now that is a walkthrough of a lot of the elements that are related to, let's say, equities. But let's go to a futures market under settings. And there are some nuances here as well. So under futures markets, we have what is called our contract roll. And we talked about this in that example of the nearby contract. So we can tell the chart to roll based on 2 criteria, either volume and open interest, a combination of the 2, or days to expiration. Now, if you're intimate with your futures markets and you know when that rollover takes place based on days to expirations, for instance, crude oil is 3 days prior to expiration and equity indexes is 7, then you could use that. But for the standard, for most futures traders, we want to be actively in the contract that has the most open interest and volume. Another way we can adjust this chart is what's something called a back adjusted. And so let me give you an example of that. So I'm going to look at feeder cattle. And notice I'm in a nearby, daily nearby. And here we can see price history. Look up here to the left. We're in the May contract. And then we roll to the August contract. There it is, May to August. And there's this large, what we call a rollover gap. The difference of what the May contract was trading for versus what the August contract was trading for. So I can come back into my settings, under my futures, under my back adjusted. And what this is going to do now is it's going to eliminate that rollover gap and smooth my chart out. And you can see that's what it did. And notice, watch up here, here's your symbol. We're in the May, and then we're in the August. So this is called a adjusted continuation chart. Now, from any one of my charts, regardless if it's futures or equities, I can right-click on the chart, and I do have an opportunity to access some of these chart settings. Barchart size, our scale, and we're going to look at events and in a second here. So under events for equities, we have dividends and earnings and splits. I can click on those and that will denote on my chart. Let me do this first. Go back to a plain chart. At Apple, and you can see the donations, dividends, and earnings, dividends and earnings. Now, there is a way what we can do is called a back adjusted for dividends chart, or sometimes referred to as a real return chart. So let me do this. I'm going to move away from Apple, and I'm going to go to a stock that I'm familiar with. And this is a $20 stock that pays a $1 dividend. And you can see the dividend dates here. Now, if I go back to my settings under my events, I have this set to dividends back adjusted. In other words, the dividend that this stock pays, which is a $1 dividend, so that's why it's really easy to see this on a $20 stock, is added to the price of our chart. Now watch, here is that dividend date here, and watch what happens when I turn this off. Notice how our price falls down by that $1 dividend that we just took away. If I re-add that dividend back in, back adjusted, watch what happens to the green little box. It pops back up. So a dividend adjusted chart is a way to kind of look at your real returns as it includes dividend payouts. Now, like a paintbrush is to an artist, or a saw and a hammer is to a carpenter, tools are a trader's way to enhance their charts. And Barchart offers two toolkits. One is the toolbox. The other is the tool panel. What we'll come to discover is that they both contain the same tools. They're just sorted differently. So let's go back to Apple. And notice, remember, we were doing dividends before, and this is kind of one of the nice features about being a login user. Whatever I've left on my chart on the previous time I use it will still be there when I return. So let's turn off earnings and dividends. Now I've got a clean chart. So let's start with tools. So let's look at something simple as a trend line. So I turned on trend line, I clicked on it, and now what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to draw a trend line, left click, hold, and I'm just going to drag it across until I find a level or a line that I like, that I'm going to determine my trend line. Now I can do this with all tools. This is how basically we draw our tools. Now if I click on the tool itself, notice that there's these little circles that are created. Now these circles tells me that this tool is now active, that I can manipulate it. So the first manipulation I want to talk to you about is this little cross here. And if I left click and hold that circle, I can move the chart around until I find that desired starting point. But I want to watch what happens here as I move closer to a lot of these candles and I let go of the circle. Notice how it kind of jumps towards that candle. Jumps towards that candle. This is called snap mode. So a lot of traders like this. The tool will snap to the closest current price. I prefer to have it on all the time, but there are sometimes in moments where it will continue to snap to a price that you don't like, and you can turn that off. Again, watch how it kind of like snaps right to one of these high lows or closes. See how that kind of snaps right there. Now, the other thing I can do is if I get to this, what I call my compass, right there, so you can see that looks a little bit different than that cross, I can manipulate the line by moving it around as well, repositioning it. Also, I can right-click on the tool, and this allows me to change the characteristics or the style of it. I can change the color, I can change the thickness of my line. I can change it from a solid line to all these different dots and dashes. And each tool might have some unique properties. And for instance, here on the trend line, I can show prices, I can show price differentials, I can show bar counts, how many bars between my 2 points. I can extend the line. Extend point 1 would be to the left, extend point 2 would be to the right. I can show arrows. I can show an arrow to the left, I can show an arrow to the right. Here you can see that. And again, if I click on my chart and activate that chart, I can, again, manipulate that accordingly. Now, if I don't like all those details or I don't like all those characteristics, right, I can just click one off and apply which one I want. Or I have an option to reset to what I like to call the factory setting. And I can just start all over again. Horizontal lines, and then again, another very simple tool. Again, all I have to do is click on the horizontal line. I place my cursor where I want to draw my line, and I just place it. Now, here's a little trader's trick that I use, is I kind of like coming in here and on a horizontal line is I'm going to right click on it, again, where I can manipulate this line or just change the settings on it. And I'm going to clone it. And what I usually do, and you'll see this if you've been in a lot of my webinars, is I usually have 3 lines on most of my charts. And why do I do that? Well, what I like to do is I like to keep, 3 lines for me to kind of frame price. I might use 2 lines for areas of resistance or target areas where I think price is going to run to. Or I might use a couple lines as where I believe that there is a support in the market, somewhere maybe right around there. So now I've kind of defined price. So that's a little trick for you. I like using 3 lines in that terms. Now, some other tools that we have, Fibonacci's are a very popular tool. And we do get some interesting questions based on Fibonacci's. Again, I'm just going to click on Fibonacci. I'm going to start left click at a starting point, and I'm going to hold that until I find the right ending point, and then it sets my Fibonacci line. Now, like a lot of times we get these questions, folks will say, hey, how come when the numbers are upside down? This is 0 on the top. This should be 100%. But remember what the Fibonacci is calculating. If we started at this point and we were assessing price moving to this point, well, we were looking about retracements, and we want to know how much a percentage of price as it retraces. So if price goes from here all the way back down to here, that would be 100% retracement. So the 0 and 100 is based on the starting and ending points of your Fibonacci's. And again, every tool has some unique properties, and you can change them and modify them according to your needs and wants. For instance, maybe we'll just turn on the 50% retracement. Now, another popular tool is text. and I can just click on text and type in a word. For instance, here's the word support. And I'll just left click on the chart and that will set the word. Again, I can then click on the tool, in this case, the text. And again, here's my compass, which allows me to move that around. Or I can use the crosshair, there it is, and make it bigger or smaller. I can also right click on it and go to a clone, like I showed you before with the line. Maybe I will make a couple clones here where I feel that there is support in this market. Now I've added a lot of tools to this chart. Now if I don't want to see a tool, I want to get rid of a tool, it's easy as just clicking on a tool. Again, oops, right clicking on it, right clicking on our tool and just deleting that tool. Or I can come up here where it says clear tools and I can clear all my tools. Now it's going to say, you sure you want to clear all these tools? Yeah, I'm pretty sure I can clear all of those tools. Now there are some other tools that I want to show you real quickly. Here's calculations, and calculations are really nice because we can use them for a variety of things. For instance, here is a price to range, and I like this one because I kind of do an analysis based on data points of actual price movement and a percentage price. It kind of can combine them together, and again, you can manipulate that one or change the settings or again delete it. But the tool that I like in calculations, let's go back to our cattle here. If you're not familiar with cattle, I'm not one of the ones that trade cattle much. Let's go to my tool here, and under calculation is what's nice about this one for futures markets is the profit and loss and risk reward. What it does the calculations for you based on the tick values. Now, if you're trading a stock and it's pennies and dollars and pennies, you know, it's pretty easy to figure out if a stock goes up $2.50, you made $2.50 times how many shares you have. But what is nice about this tool for futures contracts is you can write in the number of contracts you're trading, but you can just click on your entry level and you click on your exit level and it'll do the calculations for you based on the tick value of the price movement that you just identified. And you can change it from long to short and you add a number of contracts. This is a really nice tool for futures traders. And finally, we have symbols. And symbols, again, there's a lot of different symbols you can use. Again, just click on a symbol, bring it to your chart. Again, you can clone that. You can change color. And you can manipulate its size. Again, them around.
Hey, John, I'm sorry I'm sorry to butt in here, but I think this is a really good opportunity for you to show everybody how Barchart will remember all of your preferences on your tool. So you just changed that arrow to red. Now, if you add another arrow, go ahead and add another up arrow. You're going to see that that's red because that's what you change it. We're going to remember all of your preferences. So just wanted to throw that in there.
Great, Gene. Thanks for helping me with that. So again, once I've used those tools, if I don't want those tools, I could just right click on them and delete them, or I can clear them through here. Which now brings us to our tool panel. Now, again, the same tools that I just showed you here in the toolbox are found in the tool panel. They're just sorted a little bit differently. Here's your calculations. Now, there are some little features here in the tool panel which I kind of like. First, here is our snap. And this is a magnet. So this kind of tells you that when I'm drawing lines, they're going to be lines or tools, they're going to be snapped to the closest current price. Again, if I use the toolbox, I can just turn it on there. But down here where it says, let's say, this is where we can lock our tool. So for instance, let's say I go in and draw a horizontal line, and I'm just drop it anywheres. And if I click on that line, I can manipulate it. I can move it up and down, right? Or I can, change the color or whatever. But if I lock it, right, it's going to lock all my tools on my chart. Now notice, look, I'm going to try to move that around. I can't because it is locked. Now, what I also can do is, let's say I've drawn a line and then I say, oh, you know what, maybe I want to look at this line here, right? Well, I'm going to say now, you know what, I want to move that line back to where it was. Well, this will allow me to undo the last movement, move it back. Or I could redo that movement. So the tool panel allows you to undo and redo and also to lock down a lot of your different tools. Now, the charting would not be complete without technical analysis and technical indicators. A bar chart offers over 100 different technical studies, as well as a resource library under the Learn that has all those indicators. And inside that library, you can read the terms and conditions, the calculations, and see an example of those indicators. So let's do that. Let's go through some of the studies that are here, and let's just do a couple simple ones. So first of all, if I know the study that I'm looking for, I can just basically type it in. So I'm going to type in moving, and then you can see it comes up moving average. And so like Gene had pointed out, just like with our tools, when we're using our studies, it will remember the previous time I used this study. And so in the last time I used this study, I used a 13-period moving average. So again, I can set this based on the period of time if I want to change it to, high, open, low, or close. And I can change, the width and the color. Now, one of the things about a lot of the studies that we're going to look at, there are two types of studies. Some are called overlays and others are called standalones. And what that means that, for instance, a moving average is probably better suited on our main window chart. In other words, right on top of our price. But there are other studies that are where we might want to create a new pane so we can look at them separately. We don't want them to crowd our price. So a moving average is a main chart window. And Barchart gives you the default that is the recommended setting for some of these different studies. So moving averages, we're going to overlay. We're going to lay it right on top of our chart. Now, once I've set that chart, I can come back in here and do a couple of different things. I can clone it and do a new study. Let's use 20, and I'm going to change, let's make it a blue line and add that. So now I have a 13 period and I have a 20 period. Now, again, as Gene pointed out, if let's say I move away from and I add a study, it's going to remember that study that I preset. In other words, in this case, I believe it's going to show, I hope, Gene, this is what it's going to do. It's going to show that 13-1, right? Not the clone, but the one that I originally. And not auto parts. Whoops, again, fat finger. There we go. Now I go back to Apple and see my studies are still there waiting for me. So let's look at some new pain studies. So let's go to another popular one. Here's a MACD, exponential MACD. I'm going to add that. Again, notice that there are parameters that are unique to this study that, again, you can modify or change. And let's add another study. Let's add relative strength index. Again, data points, how it's configured, and variables. So here's a little thing that happens now. As we add more panes to our chart, notice what happens to our chart. Our chart gets larger and larger. So you might have to scroll down to find that study that you're looking for. Or remember, in our settings, right-click Settings, Display Settings, Chart Size. I could just make my chart smaller to help me bring in that study. Now, another thing that I can do to kind of format this is I can just do a simple border control, right? Left click, drag, and make our study larger or smaller based on this border control. Another neat feature that we allow you to do is notice these little arrows here in the right-hand corner. What I can do is, notice this one here only has an up arrow, but if I click on that, what it does, it brings that study up. And I can do that again, and now it's going to bring it up above my chart. And I can configure all of these based on these up and down movements. I can bring this one up, or I can bring it back down. And this way allows you to look at, again, multiple studies, right? And kind of get that sense, or that visual sense of whatever you're looking at. In this case, you know, our price has turned, our momentum has turned, our RSI is strengthening, so we can see it all together. Now, remember I talked to you about in settings under, I believe it's this, yes, the display, we talked about the Trackball. Well, here is, you can see it in motion. Notice these little balls here, right? Notice there's a little ball here too, right? This is what I was kind of saying to you. This is like a multiple cursor. As I scroll my cursor back and forth, or my crosshairs back and forth, the tractor ball will pick up those data points. Those data points will be found in our header. Now, again, I don't need the tractor ball for it, but it's a kind of nice way to say, oh, you know, I'm looking at this candle, or I'm looking at this candle, you know, to make sure that I'm in the right or proper position. So again, if I don't like a study and I don't want to use it anymore, I can just go over here where there's an X and I can delete it. Or I can go to the clear and clear studies and start from scratch. Now let's do this. Let's add a couple different studies. So first I'm going to add Bollinger Bands, which is an overlay. And let's add, I kind of like the MACD on this one as well. So let's go back to our MACD oscillator. And I've added that. Now let's say this is a combination of studies that I really like. I want to use this on a regular basis, right? Now, every time I come to Barchart, you know, I could pull these studies out onto my charts and look at them. Or we can start talking about something called templates. And what's nice about templates is templates allows the user to create a chart with these preset studies. And multiple templates allow a trader to tailor the right studies or a combination of studies together and allows them to save them. So notice that I do have a lot of templates in my personal account. But let's just save this template that we're about to create, this one with the Bollinger Band and the MACD. And so just for our purposes, I'm going to call it BB MACD. And I'm going to save it. Now, when I go back to my templates, I can scroll through all my templates. And because it was the last one created, it's at the bottom of the list. So I could, let's say, check out my moving average and come back and look at my MACD Bollinger Band. Barchart also offers you some pre-defaulted templates. So let's open those up. Now there's 6 of them in here. Now 5 out of the 6, the squeeze, the futures trading guide, the chart of the day, the EMAC volume, and the golden cross, death cross, all have archived webinars that tells you about and how you can use the strategy that's behind the study of this template. So I recommend if you want to use those, you watch those videos. Now, if I don't want to use this template, I can always take it off. And now I'm going to go to what I would call my basic chart. Now, I usually keep my charts in what I call a template. It's called my just chart, which is just my candlestick chart. And again, no matter what market I go to, for instance, remember we did cattle here, which is a bar chart. I can go into my template and change it to my just chart or my moving average chart. So there's a lot of different templates that you can create and a lot of different combinations that you can use. And so why would we do something like that? Well, let me go to something, let's say a watch list, or if you're on one of our data pages, you know, a trading idea page, I can go to flip charts. And what I can do is now I can scroll through a lot of different charts very quickly. And also I can scroll through a lot of different studies that I use in my trading analysis as I'm flipping through all of those charts. And I don't have to just reset them every time. I don't have to recreate them every time. So it's a really nice way to be efficient as a trader to allow you to walk through multiple studies that are designed based on your parameters or applications. Let's go back to Apple. All right, so compare. Now, compare is an easy way for the user to visualize a price action of up to 8 different symbols based on a baseline symbol or what we call a reference symbol. So here remember we're in the Apple chart, and what I can do is we do have some default symbols that you can choose from. For instance, here's the S&P 500 index. So let's just pick that. So it propagates into this box, and at this point now I can also manipulate this. I can use a line chart, or I can use any one of these other chart settings that I've already demonstrated to you. Again, as a preference, I think it's just a lot easier. If you start using candlesticks on top of candlesticks or bar charts on top of bar charts, it's going to get very, very convoluted. So, you know, I think a line chart is probably the best practice in this case. So let's do this. First, let me just show you. Let's change this back to blue. Show you what that looks like. So here we've done that. And now this makes a lot of sense, right? The S&P 500 is going to shadow the Apple, right? As Apple goes, so does the S&P. But let's go back to our compare. Notice how it says left here. If I click on that button, what it's going to do is whatever I'm comparing, right, this S&P, is going to create a price scale on the left-hand side of my chart. Now, why do I do that? Well, because if I look at the price of Apple on the right side and I look at the price of the S&P on the left side, you can see that they're pretty far apart in terms of values. And if I did the compare and I did not use the left, and I did that, and now we're just going to compare based on one price axis. Here you can see that this is not very helpful for me. So it's important for us to understand that when we start comparing symbols of wide variety of price, that we want to create these two different price scales. Now, there's another aspect to this. If I start adding multiple, for instance, here I'm going to add the NASDAQ, and let's also add NVIDIA, right? And they are in the left axis, right? Their prices are in the left axis. The right axis is the price of Apple. But notice, right, the index is 15,000. The other index is at 4,500. And here we see NVIDIA at 500, a wide range of price. So again, this is not very helpful for me in terms of price comparison. So what I can do is come back into here, and now what we're going to do is we're going to change this to a scale, and a scale that uses a percentage of change, which I've already demonstrated to you. And now what we can see is a much better chart for us to do price comparison. But remember, when we're using price percentage change, it's determined by our starting point in our data range. So if I change that, we'll change the percentage gain or loss in that comparison. FX, or sometimes referred to as our expression page, is a way for us to create expressions or equations based on, again, could be based on a comparison. Now, I do have a couple options here as well. I can use a chart, a main chart, which would, whatever expression I create will become a chart itself, or I can create one in a pane. Now, some of you might be familiar with a concept that's called relative strength, not the relative strength index, but the relative strength. So for instance, let's look at an expression where we're going to do the SPY. Boy, my keyboard is really kind of funky today, Gene. SPY, bracket, space, divided by space, bracket, Apple, a main chart here. And now I'm going to see an expression, which is the SPY divided by the price of Apple. And I can look at that as in terms of maybe a relative strength or weakness as we compare the two expressions. And delete that. Now it's going to return me to whatever the first expression was, or the first symbol, and that's at SPY. Let's go back to Apple. I have to change the batteries in my...
Yeah, John, I do think I think you ran out of batteries.
I think it's running out of juice, all this running around. All right, so let's go back to like it never goes easy, right, Gene? Never, right?
Yeah, I guess you always have to keep those battery backups handy.
It's the gremlin of the ghost in the machine. So we do have some popular expressions that folks like to use and that we've created for you. Here's one that is very, very popular. This is the 10-year yield versus the 2-year yield, which is kind of what we call our yield curve, right? And if you've been following that, we've been in an inversion for a while. So this is a very popular expression. Some of the other expressions that we have created for you is for our commodities traders. For instance, here's the corn nearby 1 versus the nearby 2 spread. Now, when we look at these ones, it's important that you understand what we're looking at. So let's look at that chart, and it says it's going to give us the nearby first and nearby second. So if I apply that, might not know what nearby 1 or nearby 2 is, but what happens is the chart will show you the symbol, which is the first one, that first symbol. So the nearby 1 today for corn is the September contract. If I'm not 100% sure, I can always go down here where it says futures prices and just look to see what are the active contract months. And you can see the first active contract month is the nearby September. So we're really looking at here is the September versus the December chart. Again, if I look at the symbolism on the chart, it's going to just tell me nearby 1, nearby 2. Now, here's a little tip for you. If you want to be in the most active contract month, like we did with our nearby frequency demonstration, you use the symbol, the root symbol, and *0 will put you in the most active futures contract. And then you'd have to pick whatever month afterwards. So, for instance, for corn, the *0 right now would be the December contract. And then if you were going to look, let's say, December versus March, then you'd have to go, and for today, you'd have to go 1, 2, 3. You'd have to do *0 and then *3. So that's a way to use for spread trading for our commodities traders. And I think it's really kind of nice that we have this feature. I do use this one a lot. So let's go back to Apple if I can get there. My fingers. Yeah, wow, this is really weird, Gene. AAPL, there we go, finally. All right, so that brings us to grid view. Now, what grid view does for us is it allows us to look at a specific symbol and that symbol in 2 or 4 different time frames, either side by side, on top of each other, or in here, a nice little box cluster. And what I can do here is I can design this grid based on the multiple time frame analysis that I like to use. Again, I can change my frequency, my range, right? I can set this one up based on my criteria. So what I have here is I have an intraday, 5-day, 30-minute chart, 2 dailies, a daily 3-month and a daily year, and then I have a weekly chart. Now, what we also can do with this grid is I can add up to 3 studies. Now here I only have 2 studies. And the 2 studies that I have was that predetermined moving average, that exponential 13-day moving average, or 13-period, excuse me, and my MACD. Now, why do I do this? Well, seasoned traders like to look at markets from multiple time frames. What we want to do is we want to kind of look to assess trend or assess price movement across multiple time frames to see if they're in concert or see if they're in conflict of each other, and look for trading opportunities based on this conversion or diversions or confluence of our trends. So here what I'm seeing for Apple is, my intraday and my daily, right, are still trending up or trending up. My momentum has turned up. Now, what's wrong with my weekly? Well, my weekly momentum has turned down. So what is telling me is maybe I'm looking for day trades or swing trades over the next day or two where I'm riding this short-term momentum, but maybe I need to be cautious about making a long-term investment until my weekly trend turns positive or my weekly momentum turns positive. So this is a way where we can look at multiple time frames and do multiple time frame analysis based on whatever criteria that you're interested. And so here's just a real easy way of looking at trend, moving average, and momentum, our MACD oscillators. Turn that off, returns me back to my original chart. And that'll take me to a couple more features before we finish up today. So let's go here to this little piece, and this is called our hamburger or our chart menu. And I can open that up, and that'll access a lot of different links that are on our chart. Now, before I do that, let me do this. I'm going to come over here on the right. I just want to show you this as a comparison. I'm going to right-click on my chart and open up. I showed you this before. Now, notice that a lot of the information that is in the hamburger is also found when we right-click, but there are a few things that are different. Let's just look at some of them. So here's our comparison chart. Here's our expressions, our FX. Here's our tools. Here's our alerts. Alerts are found right here. Here's our watch list. I can add this chart to a watch list. I can do that right here as well. I can save it to my charts. Now, my charts is a library of charts that we create that maybe we'll use special symbols or special tools, but we don't want to keep them permanent. We don't want to make templates for it. And maybe we'll store them in a library as a resource so that we can come back and look. And I can do that here. I can look at something called More Data. Now, More Data is a really nice tool because it comes in here and it opens up data information on the symbol that I'm actually trading. First quotes, performance, our bar chart opinion, a little bit of a technical analysis information. And if you don't know what the stock does or what they do or what their business is, you can get a little bit of a profile look at it. And then you can share through social media, right? Some of our links there. And you can download the chart. You can print the chart. You can print the chart right from here. And you can also save it as a file, an image file as well. Again, notice that you can do all that from just inside, right-click inside the chart. All right, and the last thing I want to show you today is this little arrow here, which is called our Popout. And this will take our chart to the max, and it will propagate the field that we have on our display here. Notice how large this chart is. Now, I like this feature because it really gives us kind of this professional feel, and it doesn't diminish from anything else that we've talked about. All those tools and those studies and that toolbar and that box are all available to me, and I can set all my stuff up as I was. There is, again, there's my grid view. But one thing that is different about the Popout is up here where it says mode. I can click on that, and some folks like to see the dark mode or the moon mode, right? The night shade. So this is a way how you can get to that setting. All right, Gene, I promised you this was going to be a little bit on the long side. So I don't know. Do we have any questions, Gene? I haven't really been watching the chat box.
I don't think there's anything to go through. John, you have covered almost every single feature that we have on these charts. So great session, packed with information. Just a reminder to everybody, there will be a recording a little bit later on today. You'll get an email with the link to the recording. It's also going to be available on our Barchart YouTube page and also in our webinar archive page. So if you need to go back through again and go back through some of these tips, you'll find those sessions available for you to go back through and review.
Yeah, you good one. And then Jean actually created a couple slides for you guys, just kind of condensing some of the tips that we went through. And you can download those slides and check those out as well. So we didn't get a chance to get to that. And the other thing I want to remind you folks is, if you have a question about anything Barchart, especially about how to use some of these tools or something that I've just demonstrated to you, send your questions to support@barchart.com. And we have a great support staff that will answer those questions for you. So I'd encourage you to do that as well.
Yeah, I think John is going to tell you that the biggest takeaway today, if you do not have a Barchart account, and we have 3 levels of membership, if you don't have an account, in order for you to take advantage of all the different saving mechanisms, and where we remember your chart preferences, where you can create templates, just go ahead and sign up for a Barchart account today. Right, and John just is showing you our 3 levels of membership with some of the membership comparison features.
Just remember, the first 30 days is free though, right?
Correct. And if we didn't answer your questions, please email support@barchart.com. I've gotten a lot of you sending us great comments saying that as a brand new subscriber, you are definitely going to use some of these tips that John has shown you and taught you about today. So practice, 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 email support. And John, thanks for a great session.
Thanks for helping me out, Jean. And folks out there, be safe, best of health, and the good of all trading.